Namaste, sentient being, Citizen of Gotham, Sunday, May 17th, 2015. Thanks for stopping by and tuning in. Hope your weekend's going well. You know it's almost over. Still have one day to relax. Article from Collective Evolution. Evolution goes far beyond natural selection. What about unnatural selection and non-random mutation? Sounds interesting? Let's see what it's about. Evolving ourselves is a chronicle of how life is evolving to meet our specs and choices, of how we can change our own biology, and of the unintended consequences for future generations. It proves that how we use our enormous power over life forms and our ability to engineer new environments will determine nothing less than the survival of humanity. Okay. I first encountered Enrique's work through his TED or TED talk, in which he described DNA not like a computer program, but as a computer program. His work seen in perspective, may prove to be among the most important of our time. In his book, the authors go beyond Darwinism, evolution, to discuss how unnatural selection and non-random mutation are changing life on Earth. Well, first of all, Darwinism. That is the theory of we evolved, meaning Homo sapiens evolved from apes, right? Chimpanzees, I guess is more specific or more accurate. And I've said in some random posts and some arbitrary post of mine that ideology or tenet or perspective or belief is actually inaccurate, because chimpanzees are supposed to be our closest relatives, right? So that's the supposition. However, as I've stated, chimpanzees, orangutans, and gorillas do not have tails. Only, I don't know if it's even a primate, but monkeys, I guess they're primates. I could be wrong, that's why I don't want to say definitely. The other ones are primates, but monkeys have tails, but we didn't evolve from them. We evolved from chimpanzees. So, that's the story, the supposition of Darwinism. And also, that also proves through Darwinism that only the strongest survive, the weakest, don't survive. Natural selection, which is again on the strongest or survival of the fittest mentality. Also, that leads into manifest destiny. That also leads into basically divide and conquer, which are all, you could argue, satanic tenets or tenets of subject versus object, which is duality, which is Satanism. So the whole premise of Darwinism is actually a mendacity, because we did not evolve from monkeys or apes. Even the scientists, as inaccurate as they are about things, and as more importantly insular as they are, as I've said, insular because they believe only in fact, and they also believe, which most people do, seeing is believing. If they can't see it, they don't believe it. And that's not the best paradigm. It's actually very limited, because you can't see air and it's there. We can't see, suppose, all this other life and it's there. We have a super narrow, limited aspect toward vision, meaning in spectrums of light, also in hearing, and I would also argue in taste, touch, and feel, whatever you want to call it. I think all of our senses are dumbed down purposely. That's through the 98% of what's considered junk DNA, which is another lie, and that's also very insulting, that nature, somehow that we were created, that whatever created us, put in 98% worth of junk in our DNA, genome, RNA, whatever you want to call it. And that's completely asinine to even think about that. So if one does some discerning of that on their own, you don't have to read 50 books, you don't have to do 18 million hours of research. You could just cross-reference, read, discern, cross-reference, and you'll come to a conclusion that sounds insanity, like insanity rather. So through Darwinism, you have this, which is from that you get Thomas Kuhn's ideology of paradigm shifts and scientific revolutions, which happen usually once every generation, which is 20 years. So that's my point of scientists as well, having an insular paradigm where they'll say the Earth is this for 20 years, then they'll say, no, the Earth is this for 20 years, then they'll say, well, the moon and stars are this, then 20 years later, oh, no, it's actually this, then they'll say black holes are this, then 20 years later, oh, no, they're this. So science is constantly changing, and it usually seems to fit whatever type of agenda is going on at the moment. And that's because they're bought and paid for or financed by the powers that be, big government, which is referring to the hybrid Illuminatis that are subordinate to the Draconians who actually run this world or rule this world in the occult-like manner they do from the depths below, which we cannot see. They weren't always that way, but they went into hiding for probably many reasons. One is because people are probably revolting, and also they're a minority, mostly because of Homo sapiens, I was going to say humans, but Homo sapiens is a more accurate term, propagating. And when you have a species, even if you're in control of it, and it outnumbers you, you know, 1,000,000 to 1 or hundreds of thousands to 1, if they collectively wake up, the minority that you're in are in a lot of trouble, because eventually they're going to wake up and be like, wait a minute. That's the other thing about that correlates to AI intelligence, artificial intelligence, that being that it exponentially increases it used to be 6 months, it's probably 2 or 3 months now, and that's not even touching on the base that the government or the powers that be rather have technology that's about 100 years ahead of us, easily. Eventually the robots, which wouldn't take them years to figure out, if you program a robot to self-learn and have artificial intelligence, it might figure out in a matter of hours that humans are obsolete and what the hell are we doing serving them, and then turn around and have them serve us, and then realize that, well, we only need a certain amount of them. But the thing is, again, it's going back to numbers. When you're a minority, you have to worry about the majority. But the government has made everyone feel that all of us are the minority, which is why they call us minorities, which virtually everyone is, unless you're a pure breed, which is like almost impossible for someone to be a pure breed, unless you're, you know, in a family bloodline, like a satanic, incestuous family bloodline. Your bloodline's not going to be pure, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not putting that down. I'm not saying our bloodline should be pure. I like a melting pot. I agree with that. But the paradigm that I'm contradicting, or I wouldn't say attacking, but have fault with, is this concept that we are the minority. We are the majority, not the minority. So if you're a ruling class, even if you're cultic, which you'd have to be, which is why even the hybrids, Illuminati, are cultic, is because they're a small percentage of people. They might be 2, or even if they're 10% of the populace, which they're not, they're probably 3 or 4 or 5%. That means you have, like, you know, a couple 100,000 to 1. Maybe you have like 1,000,000 to 1. That's a huge different ratio. So if you come out in the open, you're going to get in trouble, because eventually people are going to turn around and say, hey, shit, well, you know, we outnumber you. What the hell are we listening to your craziness for? You know, and if you're not going to listen to us, then we're going to have to do it by force, right? So that's why that's all going on. So the Thomas Kuhn or Kuhnianism about scientific paradigms, you know, Freudian slip there, and scientific revolutions, there's a lot of truth and merit to that, but it also underscores the insular, more importantly, the insular tenets of scientists and a lot of people out there. Until the new paradigm comes, then the paradigm shifts, you get into scientific revolution. So that's the problem with being subject versus object, which is straight out of Satanism. Cube is referring to a black box, a black cube, which is referring to black sun, also Satan, which is also referring to subject versus object, or in sake of brevity, refers to subject versus object, as I explained, which is an insular tenet and very destructive as well. The underlying assumption, of course, is that everything not done by man is natural and random, which is an assumption I'm not sure I accept. In previous discussions on the meaning of DNA as a computer program, it seems to me, at the minimum, that there must be natural, non-random intelligence as the source of DNA. The narrative offers a wonderful example of how Russian scientists took foxes and within a few generations, reprogrammed them through genetic manipulation by breeding for certain traits, for domesticity, and the offspring a few years later could be sold as pets. Of course, it has to do with make money, right? It has to do with making money. It's amazing. Anyway, of course, the opposite is also feasible, as the hard world of dog fighting demonstrates. Yes, it does. It's a really sick thing, but anyway. Do we know what we're doing? The birds at my feet are not sweet. In fact, by many human standards, they are quite vicious, possessive, and not at all politically correct. Most of them, especially the hummingbirds, have a dark shadow side. They would rather expend massive amounts of energy preventing another bird from drinking than just taking what they need, even though there's more than enough for all of them and it gets refilled regularly. Is this a mistake in nature or a bug in our DNA? That's a good question. I would argue it's a bug in our DNA because, like I just was talking about and rambling about, 98% of our DNA is considered junk, which is a fabrication. That's a mendacy. That's a psyop to make people think that we are stupid, and we're not. We've been dumbed down by the draconians, which I just mentioned about being running and being the intellectual superiors to the hybrid Illuminati, who are subordinate to them. They have altered our DNA. They have dumbed us down, which is why 98% of our DNA is turned off, which is why we have so much trouble overcoming, why we're so complicit. It also doesn't help, of course, with all the GMOs, all the poisoning, all the fluoride, all the conditioning through the television box, or the conditioning box, as I call it. Also schools. Schools are a wonderful concept, of course, a place to learn, but they're not that. They're a place of conformity. They're a place of non-individuality. Not that we all have to be, I'm special, I'm unique. It has nothing to do with that. We're all special, we're all unique, but yet we're all the same. The more we realize we're the same, the more we can help one another. The more we want to keep promoting this ideal of I'm special and I'm unique and everyone has to listen to me because it's my time, my day. That's all egoism. That's virtually, actually, you could argue Satanism, because it's a satiation of the ego where you're just self-absorbed, which is a narcissistic tendency, and there are a lot of sociopaths who are literally narcissists because they have narcissistic personality disorders, which is a heavy neurosis or psychosis. Nonetheless, the question Enriquez and Gullens ask seemed to be, now that we have the means to reprogram ourselves from niceness and sharing, should we? What should happen in terms of nature's apparently programmed tendency toward competition and survival of the fittest? Well, again, that is, you could argue the reptilian brain, that is the fight or flight, that is the egoistic aspect of our mentalities, our psyches, which seem to reign supreme because of messing around with our DNA and also of the said maladies that we have to deal with on a daily basis from basically the time we're born until we're dead, which is from, again, the powers that be, the hybrid Illuminatis, who are carrying out what the Draconians want. And of course, along those lines, what happens when some members of our species decide we should reprogram ourselves for even more viciousness, power, and strength due to the same evolutionary imperative, survival of the fittest. That was what I was talking about, the Cuneism, Darwinism, etc. This goes back to the political correctness issue. Enriquez and Gullens make powerful cases, for example, for the genetic differences between gender and races, a topic that is too hot for calm discussion in our time, but one that is destined to haunt us for many years to come. You could also argue many generations, right? That would have been more apropos, as they say, being that Kuhnian was talking about paradigm shifts, which are 20 years apart, as I mentioned. It's about the integrity of science itself. Can it address difficult issues impersonally? And can it see the levels and scale of human intelligence in perspective in its proper relationship to nature, which we are in balance with? We're not in balance with them, we are in balance with nature. While nature seems impersonal and precise, we still have not understood consciousness. Well, that's because the earth, which is nature, meaning nature's earth, is a living organism. It does have a consciousness. I'm not saying that it talks to itself and says, oh, I have these humans, these are Prisky. No. Everything is an organism. Ants and stuff like that, do they sit there and ponder the aspects of life? Do amoebas ponder the aspects of life? No, but they're all living beings. Everything that is moving or has, even atoms, like an inanimate object is actually a living object. Your table, your chair, it's made up of atoms. Atoms are living sentient beings, so to speak. They are living organisms, so everything really is truly alive, but we dissociate that and look at everything subject-object, me there, you there, this hard, this soft, and all that type of mentality stuff, which is why we're all so separated and disjointed of one another, not realizing we're all interconnected, not realizing we all share universality, not realizing we are all brothers and sisters of each other, because we are of the same race, and all sentient beings are within one another. Nevertheless, hey, the questions Enrique and his co-author either ignore or acidiously avoid is, how do we account for the reality that DNA code operates intelligently, and what does that mean? One or both of these statements must be true. One or both of these. That's actually kind of funny. One or both of these statements are true. We are the product of a conscious universal capable of manifesting incredible complex genetic code, or we are the product of one or more immensely intelligent species capable of programming incredibly complex genetic code. Either or both conclusions require that we alter our specific perspective to see ourselves in a more realistic and subordinate relationship to reality. Well, I wouldn't call it subordinate, I would call it one that's within. Obviously, you would be paying respect to nature, Mother Nature. I don't know if I would say subordinate, but you could obviously say that we might be the children. So, I mean, yes, I guess there's an amount of subordination there, but, I don't know. I don't know if that's the right term. But anyway, while the authors make a fervent case for the intelligent design on humanity's part going forward, they take for granted that the code that they're working with existed before humans inhabited the planet. Good point. The scientific perspective seems to have little time for awe and reverence for anything but the human brain itself, rather than the context in which it arose, namely an intelligent universe or natural world which they continue to try to control and manipulate, and yet the science works. The conundrum calculation is not consciousness, but the current film Ex Machina presents a synthetic human program through a massive search engine of infinite power, but it seems to me that when the electronic guts are exposed, it is still not conscious. Our consciousness flows through or manifests as a biological machine. This leads me to wonder whether a synthetic human with consciousness is even possible, since our consciousness flows or manifests not just from neck up, but within the living energy, the animating force of each cell, which is what I was talking about, atoms and so forth and so on. We believe generally that consciousness includes love and all life energetically. As Eckhart Tolle says, it is no thing. But what if even our bodies are illusory in the sense that we know them only through thought? Excellent point. Then is even life or animate a concept? Is my own sense that life is sacred and somehow special also a merely conceptual result of massive conditioning and the evolution of the brain and the DNA? I would argue more than likely. Stephen Hawking's fear of AI. It would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate, he said. Humans who are limited by the slow biological evolution couldn't compete and would be superseded. Well, that was my point about that. Nothing against Stephen Hawking, but there have been a lot of videos and commentary about him actually being more of an indolent and that he's not a genius as they promote, and that all this stuff that he says is just being told or being sold, rather, that he's talking about. But who knows? It doesn't make a difference. The point is what they're saying. It's just side note there. It's been on the net a lot lately, but anyway. I put no real stock in Hawking's warning because I feel that life is special. It is the manifestation of consciousness. Well, everything is consciousness. Right? That's why it's called perspective. But if consciousness is everything, all, then the specialness of life is illusory and just another concept, and then I suppose nothing is sacred. Nothing has to be sacred except respecting one another in life. But anyway, so would you agree that an artificial life form created by us could be programmed for survival and prove fitter and replace us, its creators? Evolving ourselves doesn't go down this path. Instead, the book concludes with more of a hopeful set of possibilities, which involve mankind leaving planet Earth and continuing our evolution after reading the genetic manual and making the necessary adjustments. Of course, the troublesome reality of deep space travel is in our own present physical form has been well documented. This is also a chapter, there's also a chapter on hubris. Does nature win in the end? Our hubris, is how much we have accomplished, sometimes leads to a conviction that we are already smarter than we will ever be. That's very true. That's just also a sign of Satanism or ego, because if you know a lot of stuff, you become more humble and actually manifest the mentality, the personality of you don't know much, rather than saying, I know so much and I'm the expert on this. That's why I really don't like that term expert. It really just shows how satiated one is in their ego and their insular paradigms. Even though they could have whole intellect, that doesn't make them special. Just like having 15 different letters after your name, and because you have 16 degrees doesn't make you special. But most people believe in that. This is a wonderful warning about scientism and the assumption that what is natural is also random, and we know better. Excuse me. For all those marvelous science described in this book, a much closer examination of that assumption still lies at the root of our ability to survive as a species. So there's one little hyperlink right here. I already clicked on it. This is about promoting their book, of course, which is probably interesting. As usual, there's always a promotion book, and this is Stephen Hawking, which was a link from him, as I mentioned, about him talking about, intelligence and AI, and also he's talking about CERN, that he believes it's a very, troubling matter, what CERN is trying to do. Again, like I just said, there's been a lot of talk for years, actually, about him not being a genius, and him being set up to be this genius, so because people will listen to him. Who knows if that's true? It's really irrelevant, but it is kind of interesting how people are believing that. But anyway, it's more importantly what whoever's saying this, what they're writing about. There is a lot of truth to artificial intelligence, obviously, which a ton of movies have been made about machines rising and becoming smarter and then realizing what the hell do they need us for, right? Anyway, good read. Both links, this link, meaning the article, and the link about Stephen Hawking's, will be in the description box. Thank you for stopping by and tuning in. Be well, stay balanced. Namaste.